Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Analysis with Ro. I'm your host Ro, giving you the latest in everything media. And today, we're pretty much going to discuss something that I had a prelude, preemptive, preview, whatever you want to call it, for the last episode, in which we're finally going to talk about Hisoka's childhood hyper-independence. And what that pretty much is going to mean. The whole word hyper-independence is going to be one of the main things and subjects that we really talk about, because I feel like it's really important for his character. Here's the thing, right? He's known to be kind of the lone wolf character within this story. But I wanted to study that from a more psychological perspective. You know, people who tend to have that high tendency, if you will, to kind of isolate themselves away from others, just kind of push themselves off to the side, be like, I'm good by myself. Today, we're going to get a bit of a preview as to why that kind of tendency exists, really. So, we're going to explore what that means. We're going to explore how it affected his childhood. And yeah, this is going to be part one of kind of that journey. So we're going to break this down kind of in three parts. We're doing childhood right now. We're going to do teenhood in unit 2. We're going to talk about how it affects his adulthood, aka how we currently see him as an adult. All right, guys, I hope that you enjoy today's episode, and let's go on ahead and get started.
Drop it off at your Pittsburgh. Change for us all. Is no free stuff. Result.
Before we get into anything else, we first gotta learn the meaning behind things, right? With hyper-independent, people got the basics, you got the general gist, but I don't think you really know the whole detail of it, right? You have the bone, but do you got the meat behind it? I don't know if you do, but I'm gonna give it to you anyways. So now we're about to learn what is hyper-independence. What does it mean? So, hyperindependence is a coping mechanism that develops as a result of negative and traumatic experiences in somebody's life. See, individuals learn not to trust other people, and instead they rely on themselves for everything. Hyperindependence can be short-lived, so for a temporary amount of time, or it becomes a trauma response that lasts for the rest of your life. And then it just bleeds into other areas and other facets of life, including your relationships, opportunities for growth, all that humdilillah. So pretty much it could either be something that affects you for maybe like a month or two, or something that could be like a childhood trauma that kind of festers into your adulthood, and it's something that you may or may not pass down to your children, depending. Talk about intergenerational trauma, maybe somewhere down the line. Point is that hyperindependence is one of those kinds of traumas. But you're still sitting there thinking, okay, but what is it? I'm gonna get to that, don't worry. Hyperindependent individuals don't rely on others, and they avoid asking for help at all costs. Again, they don't vibe with people at all, okay? Not their vibe. And they often reject support, especially, or I would say even, maybe not especially, right? But even to their own detriment. So say, for example, we have, I don't know, imaginary project, and it's a group project, but said person be like, I don't trust any of y'all to get this right. I don't care if you are as smart as me. Don't care. I don't care if you're, the best of the best. I don't want to ask for your help. I'm going to do this all by myself. Even if it would take longer to do it by myself versus with a group of people, I'd rather do it by myself because I still don't trust that we could work together as a group because I don't trust people to do well. And I know there's some people in the audience who are probably like, yeah, well, that mentality kind of makes sense. And it's like, not really. It doesn't really make sense. Okay? Depending on the situation, it can. But a lot of the times, it does more harm to the self than good. But that really is the basic of it all. The basic thought process is, I don't want anybody else to help me. I don't want to have to rely on other people. I'm doing this all myself, Mojo Jojo. I have so many heavy rocks inside this crate. I'm going to carry it by myself. Whatever hard task that you're thinking of, I'm going to do it by myself. Moving? No moving crew required. I'll do it by myself. Hyper independence, that's the basics of it, but it gets deeper than that, right? But that's what you think of when you think of hyper independence. So, this individual, they've learned to pretty much protect themselves by basically supporting themselves and having, again, no outside help. They've learned to do that because others have let them down in their childhood. Because most of the time it does come from childhood. So they've learned throughout childhood, teenhood, and now adulthood that, nobody was helping me out. Back when I was a little, a little crumb, a little fry, nobody was helping me. So I got to pick up the scraps on my own because nobody else is going to do that for me. And we're going to get into how that applies to this particular character. You're going to see how it makes perfect sense. But that really is the basic layer, right? The foundation of hyperindependence. Another thing that you need to know is that the individual also believes that being fully independent will make them more valuable. And it leads to an inability to delegate tasks. And delegate pretty much means divide tasks amongst people. Not really something that they like doing. It's not that they can't. Maybe they can, right? But they don't like doing that because, again, they don't trust you to do it well. Because they had negative experiences with other people before to where now the mind is just like, I don't trust other people to do it well / at all. So there's no point in asking. So I'm not going to give the task to you. I'll just do everything by myself. You don't got to worry about it. That brings stress, additional stress to the mind. But that's the protection that's going on, right? That's the self-defense. That's the trauma response that's going on. So it brings more value if I just do everything by myself. I'm not going to ask for help. Again, I'm not going to delegate these tasks. Additionally, a lack of support and love from others slowly chips away at the self-worth and self-esteem, which leads to many of people in this particular mindset feeling alone and unsure if anybody is going to be there for them. Will there be a support system? It sure don't feel like it. It feels like, in a way, a self-fulfilling prophecy. But it didn't start out with the self. It started out with others kind of proving that bias, so to speak, correctly. So that's what it means. And now that you know what it means, now that we broke down the whole basics of it all, right? The layer, the crumb layer, we're going to add some more. We're going to add filling to this hyper-independent pie. Imagine right now we're creating a pie. Now that you got the crust, we're going to add some filling. So now we're going to get into the symptoms of hyperindependence and what that particularly means as to not only knowing the basic crumb layer definition, but also figuring out and finding out how it affects people's livelihoods. So how does it affect people, right? What does it do? We're talking about how hyperindependence is so bad, but I need to see what it does in somebody's life. Well, now let's get into that. So, at the definition, let's talk about this. The symptoms of hyperindependence. Let's get into it right now. So, these are some of the symptoms and some of the signs of hyperindependence. So, this is what it does to somebody. When somebody's hyperindependent, they feel like they have to be an overachiever or a perfectionist. These are interchangeable. It can blend between the two. Sometimes it's one or the other, but a lot of the times it's combined. So, hyper-independent individuals might overcommit to work or on personal projects. They tend to work by taking more than they can manage by themselves. They tend to focus on doing everything just right to avoid emotional harm. So, this goes into perfectionism. I would argue this adds on top of obsession, depending on what type of person you're dealing with, right? Say again, there's a specific mysterious project out there, and that project has to have like perfect A's, right? This person is going to obsess over making sure every detail is perfect. They're not going to ask help about it. They're going to assess about it on their own. Which, depending on the task, one could argue that's not so bad until it starts affecting your daily life, right? To the point where it's like you put everything into this project. You want to make sure that, let's say, it goes above and beyond. And for some reason, somebody else says, I don't know, man. I'm not really feeling it. You get in your feelings about it. Because it's like, I overcommitted my entire life, practically, to this said thing. Or say, for example, because we are talking about someone in the entertainment field, right? We're talking about performance, winning, trophies, things of that matter. They put all of their time into just that, high performance, making sure everything's on the top of the line for that. No breaks, no nothing. There's no time to have your brain be at ease. Everything's just got to be just right. We got to be number one all the time. You see how that's starting to not be as healthy anymore? Yeah? Perfectionism. I had this issue in the past. I would still say to some degree I still have this problem. Just it's lessened. I wouldn't say it went away. That's the weird thing about these kinds of anxieties, or however you want to call it. It never really goes away. But when you have this kind of mentality of perfectionism, right, it just feels like the one thing wrong feels like the end. And you don't want it to be the end, because that means there's something off about it. You don't ever want that off feeling to exist. So you do any and yet everything to make sure that it doesn't exist. You don't ever want to feel off about something. You don't ever want to feel like there's a hole in something. It just has to fit. And I don't know how to perfectly describe that feeling, but that's really what it boils down to. It just has to feel like it has to fit somehow. It has to make sense. I found it. I found the word I was looking for. It has to make sense. But that's overachieving / perfectionism. Top of the line. Perfect days, all trophies. You win at everything. You can't ever be second place. That's the first thing. Number 2 is refusing to delegate or ask for help, which again, I feel like we've said ad nauseum for the first few times. But to put into more detail, they often struggle with seeking help when overwhelmed and unable to delegate tasks. So it basically overwhelmed with tasks that they can do by themselves. Now we're going to see how this applies to his character as an adult, because there's one scene in particular where I'm like, this especially is the problem here. Kind of the main issues that we talked about way earlier in his childhood. It starts young, right? Where there's just some kind of challenge that you're facing, you're dealing with. And the challenge, it's clear to see that you need help on it. But for some reason, you feel like asking for help, and I'm going to go in more detail about this, asking for help is a weakness. Like there's something wrong with you. Even though it's clear to see to anybody's eyes that this is not a task that you could do alone. So that's number 2. Then you have number 3, which is guardedness in relationships. So hyper-independent people may find it difficult to lower their defenses and allow closeness, which is essential in interdependent relationships. So basically, it's like keeping on guard, right? It's like, I don't want you to know what I'm feeling. And we talk about with this character, we're going to go into even more detail with it, but like, even from childhood, starting to build kind of that mask, as so many others have said, and I'm going to say the same thing, this mask, this illusion that's like, you know what, everything's fine. I have a smile on my face, so therefore nothing is wrong. And as a fellow American, you kind of start to learn that. Also going into the whole ideal of toxic positivity in a way, right? It's like you have this smile on your face. Don't ask me if anything's wrong, right? Even going into something as simple as quote unquote manners, being like, oh, how was your day? Someone were to ask you, it's like, how was your day? The polite thing is to say, oh, I'm fine, even when you know, truth of the matter is, you're probably not fine. Right? You gotta fake it till you make it. That's kind of the toxic mindset with the whole guardedness. But in interpersonal relationships, like for example, romantic relationships, where intimacy and vulnerability is everything, with hyper-independence, you can't give that to people. All you give is the fake smile, the mask that is empty. That's the guardedness. You're not letting anyone in. You have a wall around you. That's what that means. And then you have the next thing, which is secretiveness, which I would say adds on top of the guardedness, which is on top of having this wall, having this mask, you also have the tendency to keep things personal. Everything, personal information to themselves. It's as if people don't know you. They're wary of it being used against them, so they're not even going to give it out. Like again, say something is wrong. Or say that there's something on your mind. You perceive that as a weakness. Somebody could help you, but you're never going to give that out. You would rather take it to the grave with you, because you can't fathom anybody wanting to help. So you just keep it inside. And the thing about it is, that stress will eventually hurt you someday. But that doesn't matter as long as it's not going to be used as a weapon against you. Secretiveness. That's another aspect to it, right? Keeping everything to yourself. And when you know this character, he tends to do that a lot. So that's another aspect of hyper-independence. Then you have the mistrust of others. Also something we see a lot with this character. And what that pretty much means is concerned that others might let them down or betray their trust, and therefore can drive the hyper-independence further. So it adds on top of it. It's almost as if it's a layer upon layer upon layer. You got the guardedness, the secretiveness, and the mistrust. All of that combined pretty much just equals to, I'm not even going to try to interact with people in a below surface level way. There's no point in trying to do that. You're going to know me for what I want you to know, and that's it. Vulnerability? Who is she? She doesn't exist, not in this house. That's what it boils down to. Then you have few close or long-term relationships. So because of, again, that ultimate lack of vulnerability, you have difficulty in opening up. And this can hinder forming and maintaining those deep friendships and romantic relationships that people typically look for. But we can't have that, right? If we're just wearing this mask, so to speak. So that's another symptom. You also have stress or burnout. So exactly as I've been saying, it's like you keep everything bottled up inside and you're not really being honest. Well, that can take a toll on your body. Taking too much without seeking help can lead to stress or burnout. Your body is eventually going to give out and be like, I had enough. I don't want to deal with this anymore. This is too much stress. It's unnecessary stress. Because we could have others help us, but we refuse. So now everything is, strained. You also have dislike of neediness. And what that pretty much means is they may resist others depending on them, mirroring their reluctance to rely on others. So, in other words, let's say somebody else is like, oh my God, I need some help today. Or say somebody else on the emotional end is like, I feel like crying. ASPD aside, we're going to talk about that a bit later. Another reason why maybe this particular character would be like, I'm not really into you being that emotional, is the hyper independence aspect to it. So that just adds on to that, right? I feel like we can go back into, not even back, forward into the future, let's say. Like into the adulthood. We talked about that one scene with the 100 exam arc a little bit back a couple episodes ago on this podcast, and how he reacted to his now fiance when it comes to certain emotions. It's like, yeah, that's kind of where that might come from as well. The dislike of neediness. It adds on to the ASPD, to be honest. It kind of just combines and makes things slightly worse. It's a whole thing that we'll discuss later. But all you need to know is that another aspect of hyperindependence is that dislike of neediness, that dislike of emotion, to be honest. Being like, oh, other people feel these things? Why? I got over it, but did you really? The answer is no. But hey, we'll get into that later. Symptoms can also include shame, self-isolation, depression, burnout, and resentment towards self and or others, as well as social anxiety. Now, we're going to get into how this kind of affects his character later on, because not in a way that you would expect, but it does exist for his character, just in an unexpected kind of way. We don't really have a lot of that for his childhood, but we do for more so his teen and adulthood, so just stay tuned for that. Just keep all of that in mind, right? That all those things that we have talked about and discussed, the shame, self-isolation, depression, hold on to that. We'll discuss them more later. Now, in this next part, now that you know what it means and the symptoms, we're going to get more so into what causes hyperindependence to be a trauma response in the first place. So we're going to get into that and so much more into part 2 of this podcast. But first, we gotta hold it out for the break, so we'll be right back right after the break.
You know something that everybody needs, neurodiverse and otherwise? A nice, comfortable place to sleep. Well, with Cozy Earth, they can provide that and so much more. With their comfortable bamboo sheet sets that provide cooling comfort and unparalleled softness, along with their very cute pajama sets that bring a cozy elegance to a night's in, it's sure to be the utmost, most luxurious sleep that you've ever had. For free shipping on orders over $50 and easy returns, you can get the utmost comfortable sleep with Cozy Earth. For more information, click on the link down below.
Hello everybody, welcome back from the break. I hope that you enjoyed yourselves, and let's get back into the episode, shall we? So, now that we understand the basics of hyperindependence and what it means, we're now going to get into the crux of today's episode and why we're here. So how does this affect this character personally? How did this go down to Hisoka's childhood? Well, this is a theory that I ultimately have about it. So we gotta start from the top. We gotta start from where it all kind of began. For Hisoka, it started out with some past neglect, as discussed as one of the things that comes from hyperdependence on his father's part. As that lack of balance that comes from his father not being there has placed a strain onto his mom, right? Because his mom is now taking upon 2 parental roles instead of kind of just one, or having more of a equilibrium to the parenting roles that you kind of have, right? Because with parenting, it's a team. It takes more than one person typically. Shout out to single moms out there. They be doing the big things. But it really does take a team to raise a kid. It's supposed to. What happens if things don't go that way? In the case of So his dad kind of left the mom high and dry. So what ended up happening is there was a sense of strain placed on her, because now she basically has to handle everything by herself. Left with this kid on her lonesome. Big things, did the ones, did the twos. Put aside all the violent things and everything else, she raised a fairly decent kid, all things considered. But it wasn't easy, I bet. Because that's not what's supposed to happen, so to speak. Again, parenting is a more than one person job. So already we're dealing with a more so difficult foot on our hands. We didn't necessarily have the silver spoon that our fiance did. Even though the silver spoon that our fiance had was rusted, it was still a spoon, still there. But yeah, already had some gaps, a strain. So what happened most likely is that he ended up being what is called a latchkey kid. What that pretty much means is whenever your parents go out to work, bring home the bacon, do whatever they need to do to make sure the house remains stable. For that time being, in his little piece of his childhood, in which his mother was, for the most part, okay, right? No terminal illness yet. What would happen is, whenever she would go out, get home, make the money, make the bacon, we're all by ourselves. We're raising ourselves. House is all to us. House is our responsibility. We have it all to ourselves. Food, any groceries missing, that's up for us to shop. Get anything missing. Make sure that life is, a breeze by only having 2 people there. You're a kid, sure, but you feel more like a roommate being there. Doesn't really feel like you're a kid per se. Feels more like you're a tiny adult roommate. And again, that's not really mom's fault per se in this particular situation. That's just what ended up happening. But we already started off rough because of that. But then the cracks just keep growing. Because now we have the second potential cause, which would be a mixture of poverty and parentification. The special kind of parentification that we talked about. In which, instead of raising siblings or anything else that you think of with parentification, this role reversal is all about caring for the parent. Because now the terminal illness has crept in. Now it's taken into full effect. We're no longer at a place where mom could even provide. Now it's up to us, the child in this situation. You didn't know that's what was taking over, the illness, but that's exactly what has happened. It was the complete takeover. The one you didn't expect. The one you felt, I can hold off on it a bit longer, but you can't hold off on time. That's not what ended up happening. And that's the kind of parentification you have. You're stuck with a terminally ill mom. You're slowly watching the one person that cared for you slowly slip away. It's terrifying. Poor kid. Most likely the type of parentification that we're dealing with as well. The name for it is called instrumental parentification. In which again, now he's in charge of the household tasks. All of them. Laundry, working, shopping, meal prep. We are officially in the mini adult stage. We're assisting with the medicine our parent, mom, needs to live. We're doing the parental care, making sure that said parental figure is clean and whatever else is needed to keep a body up to par. All of this because this illness is slowly taking our mother away. That's what's happening now. Though someone would say, oh, this is a positive. Look at the bright side. You are such a mature little boy. But the thing is, you didn't want maturity in this way, did you? This is not what you expected. Most kids get maturity off of parents telling them to do their chores, right? I'll give you an allowance. Your maturity is watching the one parent you have slip away from you. Because I guess God had a dirty card that day. On the poker table, that's life. You got a dirty hand dealt. It wasn't fair to you, but that's what happened. You didn't want maturity to come that way. But it did. You grew up fast. That's what happened. You had a plentiful amount of downsides. Because now you're isolated, you're depressed, all on your lonesome. You're all alone. You're all alone. You're all alone. That is the overall message that keeps ringing in your head. The one person you thought would stay. One person that seemed to have cared. You can't hold on to, and it's not your fault. It's time's. So that's what ended up happening. That helped sink in the hyper-independence for his character. And it kept getting worse from there. Because after she went away, you couldn't hold on to her for too long. She died. Now what do? We're on our own. We're homeless now. Because truth be told, a child can't completely care for an entire household. Rent, mortgage, all that stuff, that's just too much. We lost the one shelter we had. It's gone now. Maybe we're dealing with additional medical debt. No matter now. It doesn't matter anymore. You don't have a house to hold it in. You're too young for them to really chase anything. So there's just nothing there. Everything's abandoned. Poor kid's homeless. Now we're dealing with it. There's no caregiver by his side. He's become very vulnerable. We talked about that vulnerability a bit earlier in an earlier podcast episode, so I won't go into detail about it here. But all you need to know is that he's dealt with the worst. All the abuse and the adverse childhood experiences that comes with being homeless. We dealt with it all without a family. By the time we finally do get discovered, we live on to what many would call the Hollywood dream. Get discovered, get primed and trained and ready to be up on stage, make a lot of money eventually, right? By the time we get there, the whole Meritno discovery, our childhood has already been soiled completely. It's already been ruined. We already grew up kind of quick. What's a bit quicker? Let's speed up the clock slightly more. Why not? You might as well say sure. You ain't got nothing to lose. And that really is kind of the foundation for his hyper-independence, ain't it? But let's keep going. Let's see the effects. And now that we know the cause, let's see the effects of this hyper-independence in his childhood. We only have about 2. Doesn't really show much within the pre-canon manga that we have. But you could take a good guess with all the clues that we do have. So use these 2 hints to furthermore some more theories on your own. So his overachieving / perfectionism started to really appear as soon as Meritno paid heavy attention to him. So this kind of been a thing since the whole arrangement started. Like I said, the best comparison to make with this relationship is if you have watched Dance Moms before, pay attention to Maddie and Abby's relationship. That is the very similar dynamic that you have with Meritno and Hisoka. You have a child trying to impress this adult because they kind of hold all the cards now. They have the checks now. They have what you need to survive. And not only that, you could have many other benefits too. Might as well impress this adult that's right in front of you now. They are your parental figure, so to speak. Exploitative, but better than having nothing. Overachiever, perfectionist in the ways of performance seems to have started as soon as you met this man. Really started to occur from him in page 20, which he volunteered for one of his adult co-workers, right? We talked about that scene before. So it's really putting those skills into action, really seeing how that takes into part for him. His focus shifted now to not only perfecting the performance, the craft of the performance, but also Nen as well. So we start to see that perfectionism towards his powers, which becomes an overarching theme throughout his entire character throughout the story overall. But we see the seeds of it in his childhood with a particular page. And probably in other examples too, those in which are not shown. Before Meritno's identity, so here's another one, was revealed, so he had signs of secretiveness and guardedness in page 48. Before we even got to know who Meritno really was, Hisoka was already hella protective when the kid just passed. In which he stated, "I don't enjoy blabbering on about past events." So he made it pretty clear that that's something that he won't do. We already have, again, a secretive and guarded kid. Not really the open, joyful expression you typically have with children. It's not what you're going to get with him. Contrary to, I guess, some people's belief. I hate to burst your bubble, but, we already started off sad and traumatized. We're not going to have a joyous moment, really. Man, it's not easy. Talking about this kid in particular. Some of the other signs, again, don't appear until later in his life, and we'll be discussing his teenhood, so that's really all that we have for now. But here's the thing, right? You have this kid who pretty much had a very dirty hand dealt to him. And throughout all of that, the main lesson that he seemed to have picked up is that everyone will leave you, whether you like it or not. Meritno betrayed the kid. That's what ended up happening. Betrayal. Whether you want to see it that way or not, that's what happened. Mom died. We don't know where dad's at. Was never in the picture. One could argue that that's betrayal in and of itself. Yeah. No other adults stepped up. Really nothing. Other adults, instead of stepping up and being like, hey, this, kid's alone, might need help, they made fun of you. They were jealous of you, of your skill, even though a mature adult would probably help the kid out. But you weren't dealing with mature adults. You're dealing with irrational ones that were jealous of you. Further isolation. Now we're even more alone. We have this supposed foster sibling. We left behind. We talk about Ibaki a bit later. We left behind because there's no point in staying in this one place if all the structure that was there is destroyed. So now we got to keep moving on. We can't stay in one place because it won't last forever. That's the main lesson as this person seems to keep learning. Is it a healthy one? No. But it's the one that keeps appearing. And that's his version of hyper-independence. There's no point in staying, because it'll all go away soon anyway. Ain't that some shit? I never told y'all this would be fun. This is trauma. Shit's sad. Shit would break your soul. But it's real though. Ain't that the whole point of trauma? Breaking your soul. The thing about breaking things is that you can always rebuild them. Will we learn that lesson? I don't know. But for right now, I think we got the general gist of the hyper-independence of where it all started. So in the next episode, we're going to add on, if you will, to the hyper-independence, but we're not going to talk about hyper-independence. We're going to talk about something slightly different, but it does add on to the whole isolation, lone wolf kind of preemptiveness that we've been discussing. Now we're getting into another juicy layer for his character. We will be talking about dismissive avoidance, childhood dismissive avoidance, and how that has affected his childhood as well. So I want you guys to stick around for that. But for right now, what I want you to stick around for is to like, subscribe if you're on YouTube, follow if you're on Spotify or any other platform that says to follow. And make sure to share this with somebody who likes this kind of content, right? If you're interested in character analyzations or conversations about anime characters in this kind of avant-garde, new kind of way, make sure to share this with somebody else. I'm sure they're going to enjoy that too. Give it as a birthday present or something. I don't know. Make it fun. I want to see you guys in the comments interacting. I want to see what type of different theories you have, different ideas. Get creative with it. And I will see you guys, my dear council members, next time.